Welcome WCC fans to Inside the WCC. With us today is Kendall Rogers, college baseball editor for Yahoo Sports and Rivals.com. Welcome, Kendall, and thanks for joining us today.
Appreciate you having me.
Well, let's get right into it. The big series, the big story this weekend is Loyola Marymount playing at Gonzaga for a 3-game set. Both teams are tied for first place in the conference standings at 12-6. The winner of this series takes home the regular season conference crown and will host the WCC Championship Series on Memorial Day weekend. Right off the bat, who do you like in this series and why?
I like Gonzaga. I just think when you look at the job that Coach Montal's done there at the Gonzaga, I think he's done a tremendous job this season. I think when you look at these two teams top to bottom, I think Gonzaga is the better team. It'll be interesting to me to see how Loyola kind of bounces back from that tough series at Arizona. They had, in my opinion, they kind of a golden opportunity to kind of maybe increase their chances of getting a large bid to a regional. They lost all 3 games to Arizona. That probably pretty much ends that bid. But, as we all know, they can win the WCC title and earn that automatic berth. So it's obviously a huge series for both teams. I think it's a little bigger for Loyola, though, because I think Gonzaga is a team that would be in the postseason regardless of whether or not they win the automatic or if they don't win the automatic. So I still like Gonzaga in the series, but Loyola has a lot to play for.
Now, looking at both teams, what do you see as the keys for Loyola Marymount and for Gonzaga? Starting first with the Zags, what do they need to do to win the series? And secondly, what do the Lions need to do to win the series?
Well, I think when you look at these two teams, I think the one thing that stands out to me about Loyola is their ability to hit. I think when you look at a couple of kids on their team, Angelo Sanko is a guy that I've seen play before. The kid's a tremendous talent. Can hurt you from a lot of angles at the plate. I think also you look at the Wheeler kid for LMU is another good hitter. I think slowing down the Loyola Marymount offense is going to be the key for Gonzaga. As for the Zags, I think they played pretty good baseball throughout the whole season. I think they played consistent baseball. You look at the fact they've hit the 30-win mark already. They have a pretty good RPI. So just kind of continue that consistency. I know that kind of may sound a little cliche-ish, but I think just continue the consistency they've showed the whole season. I think as long as they play their brand of baseball, I think they're the better team in this series. So I would say consistency would be the key for Gonzaga in this 3-game set.
Now, Loyola Marymount, led by first-year head coach Jason Gill, has without a doubt been the surprise team in the conference. And then even out of conference, posting a 9-2 record against ranked opponents this season. Can you talk about the job that Jason has done in his first season with the Lions?
Yeah, I think Jason's done a tremendous job. He's a guy I know in the profession. He's a very good recruiter off the field. He's a very good coach on the field, as we've seen this season. I think if not for a pretty slow start for the Lions at the start of the season, I think they'd be a regional team right now. And obviously they can't go back and get a mulligan on how they started the season. But this team's played pretty good, other than this past series against Arizona, since the early part of the season. So I think Jason Gill's done a tremendous job. I think he was a good addition to the conference. I think when you look at the job that he did at Fullerton and the job he did on the recruiting trail there at Oregon for the season that he was recruiting for the Ducks, I think it was a good hire. I think, and I think LMU is a program to watch here moving forward. I think one thing to remember here is I think when you look at LMU as a program, I think you look obviously at San Diego's in a very fertile recruiting ground. I think you look at LMU as also in a very fertile recruiting ground. The WCC has Pepperdine, which, is obviously close to LA, but is not quite in LA. I think LMU has the potential here to kind of build off this season and maybe make some waves there in the recruiting trails there in Southern California.
Now, switching gears a little bit, talking about St. Mary's freshman Troy Channing. He just wrapped up an amazing rookie season for the Gales, leading all freshmen in the nation with 20 home runs and in RBIs with 75. In addition, he hit 379 for St. Mary's team that played a very competitive top 60 schedule. Is he a leading candidate for National Freshman of the Year, and is he a first-team All-American?
I think he definitely could be a first-team All-American. I think he's one of 2 guys that's going to get that National Freshman of the Year award, at least with us at Yahoo Sports. I think when you look at the Freshman Year of the Award right now, I think you look at Mr. Channing there at St. Mary's. I also think Anthony Rendon, third baseman at Rice, he's a very, very good player, has a tremendous bat, a good glove, is also in that mix. I think those 2 guys kind of are a step ahead of everyone else. And I think obviously the job that Troy's done this season is simply amazing. I think when you look at it, not only his batting average, but you look at his home run and RBI totals, and also his on-base percentage. I'm a big on-base percentage guy. He's done a very, very good job of getting on base this year, and it's kind of interesting just to see how St. Mary's has kind of built some power hitters over the last couple of years. You know, last season, Kyle Jensen was a kid that we named a second-team All-American by Rivals.com and Yahoo Sports, and obviously this season, Troy Channing could be the guy. So quite a impressive streak Coach Soto has up there at St. Mary's in terms of getting guys that are able to not only produce with power, but also produce in the average and on-base percentage departments.
Now, Kendall, looking at the West region, if you look at the RPIs according to the latest Boyd's World Conference RPI rankings, the WCC right now is number 10, and the 5 conferences that kind of comprise the West region are all ranked in the RPI top 11. So we're all kind of grouped together. That makes the West region the only region in the country to have all the conferences within the region to be ranked in the top half of the RPI. Can you talk a little bit about the overall strength of the West region, not just the WCC, but all of the conferences that kind of make up the West, and how the West looks in general in terms of NCAA tournament bids?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I have so many people across the country, and obviously a large part of our clientele is from the SEC. In the southeastern part of the country, you have a lot of Big 12 fans, but I've always said this, and I'll continue to say this, that I think the West Coast is just the best brand of baseball. I think when you look at the consistency, not only the WCC, but also other conferences out there, it just can't be beaten. I think this year you're seeing, as you just displayed with those numbers, the fact that the West Coast once again appears to kind of be the cream of the crop. And what's interesting to me is the fact that the West Coast could be the cream of the crop again without the Pac-10 being very good. I mean, the Pac-10 is a conference right now that's probably going to get 2 bids. The Big West has really kind of risen to the occasion and kind of taken up the slack of those bids, and also, you know, the WCC with Gonzaga. So I think the West Coast right now is in pretty good shape. I think when you look at the Pac-10, I think you look at 2 bids. I think in the WCC, I think, you know, I guess it's tough to say if you're a WCC fan you want to root for one team or another, but I guess if you're just a hardcore WCC fan, you would like to see LMU win that Gonzaga series, because I think if LMU wins, I think the league definitely gets 2 bids. I think the Big West probably will lead the West Coast in the number of total bids of the postseason. So I think right now, I would say, you know, you look at, for instance, the Big West, I think Cal State Fullerton and UC Irvine, in my opinion, are 2 of my favorites to win a national title. So obviously, another strong year on the West Coast, and obviously, once again, would not be that surprised if a national championship comes from a team out there in California.
Now, obviously, kind of continuing the conversation with the overall strength of the West Coast, you know, there's a tendency for some of the teams out here to kind of beat up on each other, and the tendency for the losses to kind of build up as well. Take a look at kind of the case of San Diego, which has sustained several key injuries this season, probably more than any other team in the country. Looking at their overall profile, their resume, with playing a top 25 schedule, the RPI right now is in the mid-50s. They have several quality wins. How does a team like that compare to a team like Kansas, which has over 30 wins but has a lower RPI, actually a higher RPI, sorry about that, and hasn't played as tough of a schedule as the Toreros? How does that project?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think you look at Kansas, I think one of the things to remember is you look at the fact that Kansas you know, has a pretty good conference record in the Big 12, and the fact that the Big 12, I think, is the number 3, number 4 ranked conference right now. You know, you look at the fact that San Diego, I'm trying to remember here, you know, San Diego, you know, their record in WCC isn't that great. As you said, the WCC is in the top 10 of the RPI, but not quite as high as the Big 12. So I think the fact that any team that has a winning record in the Big 12 and a pretty good RPI, I think, deserves to be in. I think the thing with San Diego right now is I think you look at these guys, and obviously there's no question in my mind they have talent. They have the ability, you know, to maybe even win a regional with a little bit of luck. But I think one thing that's really going to hurt them when the committee sits down and looks at all the numbers is the simple fact that San Diego, sure, they have played a lot of teams in the top 50 RPI, but they're 6-10 against those teams, and they're also 8-19 against top 100 RPI teams. So I think that 8-19 mark against top 100 is really going to hurt them when the committee sits down. But, you know, this is one of those seasons where you really just can't blame Coach Rich Hill and the staff. I think if they don't have those injuries, if they don't, you know, lose all those key guys, Sammy Solis being kind of the first guy who got the dominoes falling on those injuries, I think they're a much better team. I think they're obviously winning a few more than 28 games. So I think this is one of those seasons that even if they don't make a regional, you're not that disappointed because there's not a lot of teams that can lose their number one pitcher and also suffer some other key injuries and get to a regional.
Well, thank you, Kendall, for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us.
Anytime, guys.
For additional NCAA baseball coverage from Kendall Rogers, log on to rivals.yahoo.com/NCAA/baseball. That does it for this edition of Inside the WCC. Fans, log on to WCCSports.com for your latest news, videos, podcasts, and exclusive merchandise.